Hello, I'm Greg Nawrocki, and welcome to today's edition of Talks About the Future. We don't know exactly how many Americans live in Poland at the moment. They come for different reasons, basically, for business, representing various organizations, usually international organizations, for teaching purposes, for military purposes, diplomacy, or for adventure as well. In some cases, by a sort of coincidence in life. And some of them stay for longer. How do they see Poland? What do they like and dislike about this country? What can they contribute, but also what can they learn while living here? We'll try to find out. Today's program is about Americans in Poland. And I'm joined by Daniel Hastings, who's a diplomat, cultural attaché, and deputy chief of the public affairs section in the embassy in Warsaw. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, Greg.
Angelo Pressello, who's a business person, directpl.com. Hello.
Hi, Greg.
Seth McMillan, also an entrepreneur, isolation support strategies in Krakow, is it? Yes.
Hi, Greg.
Hello. And Karl Wood, associate professor of the Department of English Literary Studies at Kazimierz, Wielki University in Bydgoszcz. So thanks for joining us, gentlemen. It's great that you could spare some time to talk about your life in Poland. But I know that your history of coming to this country, of coming to Poland, is very different. Some of you have been here for quite some time. Others are relatively new arrivals. So why don't we start with how did you find your way to Poland? When was that? And why did you stay? Maybe let's start with Karl Wood from Bydgoszcz.
You always have to ask, why Bydgoszcz? That's always the first question. And,
are you in Bydgoszcz now?
I am in Bydgoszcz right now.
You are? Okay.
I am. Surprising, but yeah. I like to say, Bydgoszcz, it's not as bad as you think. It has this reputation of being...
Well, we've never thought Bydgoszcz was in. Okay.
Well, anyway, I'll get in trouble here. But
okay.
No, my story, I've been here for, let me think now, it's 2020, so almost 20 years. It started, I was working through what was then USIS, USIA, and I was a graduate student in a summer program, administering in Chicago, met my wife, and she was my wife at that point, met her, and as I was doing my dissertation research, I was in Germany, started coming, and well, it went from there, and then that turned into, why don't you come here? And I came, she found me a job, I started teaching, and one thing just rolled into another, and the next thing I knew, here I am. And I've pretty much been here ever since.
2 decades, Karl, is it?
Pretty
2
much.
decades.
Yeah,
all right.
I started coming in 1999. So,
yeah.
But I've been here pretty much permanently since 2002.
So you're half Polish, basically, now.
Well, my son is. My son's half.
All right,
so.
Angelo.
So I came to Poland in 1994 with the Peace Corps, which is not in Poland anymore. So the Peace Corps is a humanitarian, let's say, arm of the U.S. government. I could have been sent anywhere. I got Poland's. My 2 friends that joined, they went to other countries.
So you didn't choose to come to Poland. It just happened. It was a coincidence in a way, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah,
all
well,
right.
I have a degree in international relations, and I specialized in this part of the world. But when I signed up, they told me to start thinking about the stans, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. So I was reading up on those. And then when they said Poland, I was like, that's in Europe. I was disappointed. I wanted a challenge, My friend Craig, he got Mali, Africa. Now, now you're talking. So
that was exotic, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I got Poland. So I came in 94. And so this is a true story. So my wife is the first woman I saw in Poland.
Oh my.
She worked for the Peace Corps. She was at the airport. At that time, you could meet people at the baggage claim. So she was right there at the baggage claim with the Peace Corps clipboard and, go to the bus.
Did you offer her some help with the luggage?
Well, I mean, we were getting our luggages like this. I didn't even talk to her because, we were on the flight. We didn't shave. We were drinking, I didn't want to make this kind of impression. So I didn't talk to her actually in the first date, but she is the first woman I saw. So
It's like the beginning of a Hollywood film, really. When you
yeah,
describe
yeah.
it.
Well, there's even more to that because it took 2 years to get a date because staff was not supposed to date volunteers, and she's,
All right,
and,
things are getting more interesting. True, yeah. We'll probably go into details with that, Angelo.
Yeah, exactly. So in any case, yeah, it took 2 years to get a date, and then 2 years after that, we were married, and I've been here ever since. I mentioned before the call, I got an MBA from SKH. So I in Poland, I was an English teacher in a high school. And then when I moved to Warsaw, I wanted to get a different kind of a job. So I got an MBA, and now I run a business.
Okay. Seth, so who did you meet at the airport, at the luggage?
I'm finding also a similar story. There was a 19-year saga. We were students at the time in Germany. And my girlfriend, who is Polish, we met a long time ago. And we dated on again, off again throughout the years. And about 4 years ago, she invited me to come here. And she said, come for me, but there's a lot of other great reasons to be here. So I moved about a year ago. So I'm between 1 and 2 years in Poland. It was a really interesting time to come here right before the pandemic set in. So I'm still really fresh, but running a business. We started here, so I have a partner that is Polish and myself who's American, and we have a Polish company that we're building.
Dan.
Well, I hate to disappoint our audience, but I did not come here for love, although I've fallen in love with Poland. I'm a diplomat, obviously, and we move around a lot in our careers. This is my 7th embassy, I'd say. I've been a diplomat for 21 years. I had served in the Middle East at the beginning of my career, then spent a lot of time in the former Soviet Union in Russia, Armenia, and Georgia. And I wanted to come into Europe. I'd never served in Europe before. And actually, I wanted to go into Ukraine, sort of Eastern Europe, because that was sort of the sexy, issues country at the time when I bid on Poland. And somebody in Washington says, you probably won't get that, but we'd love to send you to Warsaw. And I said, sign me up. I'd love to go. And we've been here for 3 years with my wife and our 3 children. We absolutely love it. I have to say for our viewers, it's very rare in the U.S. diplomatic service, or at least rare, for an American diplomat to return twice or 3 times or even 4 times to a country to serve. I've really never seen that in my career, but we have diplomats in the embassy who are on their 2nd or 3rd tour in Poland, which really does say a lot about your country, that American diplomats like it here. They want to come back and live here. The quality of life is excellent, and the issues are interesting. And it's such a pro-American place to be. So there are a lot of things to love about Poland, and I can see why a lot of our diplomats come back over and over again.
So you all are in Poland for very different reasons and very different length of time of your stay here. Let me just start with a very simple question. What do you like? But Dan started to talk about it a little bit. We're very close in terms of mindset. What do you like about this country? How does your life look here in Poland? Anybody would like to start?
Who will start?
Angelo?
Oh, me. Sorry, I was like waiting. I'm like, why doesn't he start talking? Yeah, so what do I like? It's like hard. I mean, we're talking about being partially Polish. I mean, I've lived more than half my life here.
Exactly. As long as Daniel is in a diplomatic career altogether.
Yeah, 26 years I've lived here. So,
or even more.
Yeah, it's hard to. I mean, it's normal life for me. I like living here. I like working with the people here. I mean, my whole company is basically built on exporting. Like, we do services for companies around the world, and we promote services from here because they are. We have some of the best people in the world. We compete globally, and Poles have a good reputation abroad, and we don't have any trouble winning business. So from a business perspective, it's a great place to be, besides all the personal stuff, which is really the main reason that I'm here.
Well, I have to say that I've got my own history with the Americans when you sent, and Angelo, you mentioned that, the Peace Corps teachers. which came to Poland in cooperation with Fundacja Kopernikańska w Polsce. And I remember that was the big thing really then. The teaching support was really great. I remember we did a lot of initiatives together. I think if you ask me that question, I think I would say I remember it in many ways as a forming experience, so that this education part was a main vehicle for cooperation then for me as I remember it, also about 20 years ago or so. And do you think that education in this cooperation, exchange of experience is still so important today? Maybe Karl, would you like to approach this? Question?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it isn't like it was 20 years ago like that. When I first got here, this really touching on how Angelo came, I was just after the Peace Corps volunteers. I started at a teacher training college and foreign languages, and it was right after that they stopped sending volunteers here. They started sending them to the quote sexier, more interesting countries then. But there were still echoes of that, and then when things have changed in some ways in that, like in those early days, it was really, really, oh, wow, you're the native speaker, you're the American, oh my, wow. Also just career opportunities that opened up in teaching were just huge. In this sense, I'd say now it feels like it's grown into a more mature sort of thing, where this fascination simply because, oh wow, you're an American, well, there isn't as much of that. Which isn't to say, like you were saying, Dan, it's very, pro-American, very open, very happy to see you and all that. But there isn't this sort of magic that there once was. That said, whenever we've got, because I do some work with the Fulbright program, and when there's someone here, it's always, wow, that's very interesting, that's a very good thing. But it's more based on the individual merits at this point, which I think is generally a good thing. I think, like when I first started teaching, I don't know if you felt that, Angelo, was a Peace Corps volunteer. It was like, wow, oh, well, you're the authority automatically. Oh, you know everything. And now there's more of a kind of critical exchange going on, which I think in some ways is more fruitful. It's more fruitful because then there's more learning going on in a bidirectional manner, which I think is the sign of a more mature relationship.
But you guys both can actually make a comparison to what Poland was like 2 decades ago, and what it is like today. This is something that perhaps Seth wouldn't know much about, but how do you find it, Seth, living here?
Well, I find it very welcoming to Americans. I think it's very pro USA from people that you meet and that you work alongside. But although I came for personal reasons, what I'm finding now from a business perspective are ambitious and hardworking people they have good backgrounds in education. It's still a relatively low cost structure. So I think things that are not saturated that you would find in the US from a small business perspective are very attractive. There's a lot of opportunity, I think.
Do you have plans to stay here for longer, or you're still undecided? Are you sort of trying to search your field and see how things go?
Well, maybe under the guidance of Angelo and Karl, I'd like to stay a little longer.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Welcome.
Welcome. Highly recommended.
Well, I was just going to add on to that what you were saying, Greg and Karl, about things. So, like, what I noticed was it was like that in the beginning. They would just have an American, and people would think you're an expert because you're from the States. And, listen, and we other Americans, you would see like some of these people that companies would send over. It was like, this is not the best like person, but they sent them here, and they were respected because they were older and they were American, so they probably know what they're doing. But what I noticed was around the year 2000, after the Peace Corps left, the quality of people that companies sent over was higher, much higher than it was before. I mean, really good
because
people.
The market developed.
Yeah, you had to send better people. The market was more competitive. I worked in sales, and before you could call and speak English, and they would put you right through to the boss because I don't even want to talk to this person. Now, forget it. That's not enough. You have to add some value before they let you through. So, that's like in the 2000s. The early 2000s that changed. You couldn't just get through.
It's like a business consultation to the newcomers.
Yeah.
Right, in Poland.
Wasn't so easy.
Dan, so you've been to too many places before Poland. You've listed the countries that you've been to. I can't remember it right away, but it's what was that?
Yeah,
Morocco, Egypt, Russia,
Armenia for 2 tours. My wife is from Armenia, Georgia, Russia, and then stops in Washington in between.
Wow.
But you know what, you guys, for me, what's interesting, I've had a family visit from California and Texas. I've had friends visit from Peru who I went to graduate school with. And everybody who comes to Poland and goes down into Warsaw's old town, eats its food, gets on the bike share, is just blown away at how beautiful it is, how modern it is, but yet how it's preserved its traditions and its old town. And, you know, there is, I guess, the image of Poland that a lot of people have in America and other countries is it's still sort of a bombed out ruin of World War II. And so usually the first day while I'm at work and they're here, I say, you know, you go down, I'll give you some bus tickets, take the bus downtown, go into Old Town, go get some good food, and then come back. And invariably they come back and says, my God, we didn't know it was so beautiful here. You know,
so were you in a way surprised, Daniel? Were you surprised? I mean, were you in a way victim of stereotypes and sort of false impressions of what Poland might be when you were coming here?
Well, you know, to be honest, I was an exchange student through the University of California in 1988, and I was based in Grenoble, France. One of my roommates was a Jewish American, and we came to Poland for 3 nights, went to Czechoslovakia for 3 nights in February 1989. So it was still, the Iron Curtain was still up. And, you know, obviously it was just a superficial impression, but we went to Gdansk and we went to somewhere else. Went to Krakow. And my impression back then, this was a dark country. There was lots of coal smoke. We came in the winter, obviously, which was not ideal.
Yeah, which was true in a way.
I'd forgotten about Poland. And so when I came back and saw it's got one of the greenest cities in Europe in Warsaw, it's got a hip young scene of restaurants and dance clubs and disco and music. I was really blown away. So I've always say to people, Poles, that, you know, you guys can do a lot better about advertising and branding your country, because I would say, you know, I'm not a dumb American. I probably should have known more about Poland before I got here, but I didn't know it was going to be this great.
All right.
I'll tap onto that because I've had a lot of visitors, and, you know, Warsaw, of course, is Warsaw, or Kraków, where you're at, Seth. I mean, come on, it's Kraków. You know, my father-in-law used to always just say Kraków to Kraków, you know, but that happens even out here in the provinces in Bydgoszcz. You know, I get people, or we get a Fulbrighter comes through, or somebody visiting, and it's like, hey, wow, this is really nice. There's so much more than we thought. We thought when my uncle came for our wedding, he was stunned by Gdańsk and said, oh my God, it's a city. I was expecting villages and straw booths or something. But a lot of those misconceptions, people come when they even end up here in Bydgoszcz, which has gotten a lot nicer over the years. You know, they find that same sort of thing, that it's modern and old. Things are preserved, but also updated. And just the overall, just the feeling and atmosphere, they really pick up on in life very well. And that happens again and again. And so, like, you asked what we like about here, like with Angelo. I'm like, I don't know, it's just normal, you know. But people, when they first come, they really pick up on something, and they really like it, and then they keep coming back.
All right, just a word to our viewers now. You can also take part in this discussion by dropping your questions or comments just underneath this broadcast. And we've got first question. Do you see, that's a question to you, obviously, do you see cultural differences? And if so, what is their impact on your life and your work here in Poland? Anybody would like to tackle this particular question?
Well, I was going to say, like, probably because Karl and I have been here so long, we're like, you know, blending in. So I would say probably that's more of a question for Seth to answer, because he would like, oh, you know, I did this thing, you know, and somebody.
Yeah. Over the last years.
Yeah, it's just the touching. So Americans are back slappers, okay? And the Poles, they are not. You don't slap backs, man. You don't do that. So this is something I learned because I was laughing at someone else telling the story of an Italian manager who, in saying what a great job this senior vice president did at this major corporation, came up and put his hands on his face and said, "What a good job you did for me." Now, in Italy, this is a wonderful compliment. He loves the guy. But in Poland, to touch the face, are you out of your mind? So I was laughing, and they said, "Yeah, that's like Americans who slap backs." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do that sometimes." So then that was after 10 years. So you learn these things as you go. But
all right,
anyway,
okay. So Seth, don't mess around with faces in Poland.
Yeah, don't touch faces or back. No back slapping.
Actually, it wasn't a touch. I just actually had a bad habit of smiling at strangers on the tram. And people thought I was absolutely insane,
Yes.
probably for the first 6 months. But there's another key difference that came to me, and that is a really short power distance. Through whether it's through your work or meeting a potential new business prospect, I think Americans think nothing of going right to the boss or speaking their mind. And I think I was not prepared for a big hierarchical culture where it's important to understand who you're speaking with and speak to different people in different ways. That was new for me.
But that's also changing as international corporations come in and introduce their own cultures, sometimes a bit flatter cultures. But yeah. But I can see your point. Anybody would like?
I definitely look forward to that change. Yeah, I think it's going to be great for people here as they, as a 40-year-old democracy, learn to embrace their power as citizens, so they're not afraid to speak their mind.
Yeah, but still, I would highly encourage you to keep smiling to people. I think that's a very positive cultural change to be introduced. So nothing against it at all.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead,
Daniel. You're the diplomat. I mean,
Okay, right, Angelo, and then Daniel. Okay.
All right. So what I was going to say is, I once met a Japanese sociolinguist who explained to me that in the Slavic culture, if you smile too much, you are a silly person. And she said, "Have you ever seen Vladimir Putin smile?" And I'm like, "You know what? No." And she's like, "Yeah. I mean, you've seen the American president smile all the time, but you never have seen the Russian." And okay. So she's like, "Yeah, that's Slavic culture, which Poland is part of that Slavic culture, and that's why a smiling person is silly."
Right. Okay. So it's basically an ideological choice of your life, whether to smile or not, depending on where you belong, which type of culture you belong to.
Yeah, I'm in the West.
I can see that. Daniel, are you in the West as well? You are indeed.
Yeah, what's been interesting for me is that seeing Poles revere their history. There are anniversaries every year. It doesn't matter if it's a round anniversary, like 25 years or 50 years. It's the 256th year, the 164th year. And so I find that very impressive. I was not expecting that, but it tells me that Poles really value their history, and they honor it, and they keep it alive in their children's hearts and their next generation. And so that's something quite different for me, because I grew up in the Silicon Valley, where you're always looking in the future, the next best idea, the next best technology. And so that's been, I would say, culture that's been hard for me a little bit, because I like, Americans like to look ahead, and Poles, they honor their history, and I think that gives them a lot of inner strength as well. And I would say that sometimes in America, I think we're too quick to sort of tear down old things, like old buildings or things like that, or and maybe we could honor our history more. So that's a big one. Culturally, also,
but perhaps it works the other way around too. Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes.
Meaning that perhaps you're a diplomat. Perhaps you can't say too much of that, but perhaps we look at our history a little bit too much, don't you think?
It's a balance, I'd say. I think in life, you can never do black or white. You've got to be in the middle. And I think, it's not for any outside diplomat to tell Poland or another country what the magic solution is, because the fact of the matter is there is no magic recipe for these things. I would just say, my life as I get older, I'm 52 now, trying to find a balance in things that I do is really important. It's not easy, but, I think it's good to balance the old with the new. It's good to balance risk with conservative thinking. It's good to balance, spicy with not so spicy. So it's I think it's a good exercise that we all should, try to go through our lives, but it's not easy, that's for sure.
Right. Anybody want to add anything to it? Okay, we've got another question from our viewer. Have you ever been amused? That's from a different department. Have you ever been amused by stereotypes of Americans that Poles seem to have?
I always notice I speak way too loudly. The volume must be turned down here.
Yeah,
I started noticing that one myself after a while. That's the thing that I've noticed after living here for a certain period of time, how I've in some ways adopted some of those. And so like that thing about speaking loudly, I've noticed that's maybe there's some truth to it. I started noticing it, and then some friends of mine who have come to Poland much later, but also from the US, after about a year or maybe two, I was back home in Wisconsin, and oh my God, people do speak loudly there. I don't know. So that one maybe.
All right.
I'm not sure. It's hard for me to have distance to them anymore.
On stereotypes, I'm a little partial to the West Coast of the United States. So I guess I always interact with Poles who've been to New York or Boston or Chicago, but granted, it's harder and more expensive to get to the West Coast. But I think a lot of stereotypes about America are maybe based on those major metropolitan areas. And, I'll be really honest, I like to say there's California and then there's the United States. California is like this big laboratory, this experiment that's always going on. It's burning right now. But don't judge the United States just by the East Coast, because it's a huge country, not only population-wise, but land-wise as well. And there are differences, I think, in a way, regional differences, the way that Americans approach things. So, we don't, just because somebody's from Texas doesn't mean that everybody thinks like a Texan, I guess is what I would say. And
not all Texans think alike.
That's right, yeah.
Well, that's one thing that I'm glad you brought all that up, because, when I'm teaching about American culture, they come armed with a lot of these stereotypes, and it'd be kind of hard for me to list them. It's not so much stereotypes as sometimes cliches or things that are sort of true, but not. And what I really have to do a lot is the answer to almost any question is yes and no. It depends. Where are you talking about? California, but which part of California are you talking about? The Central Valley or the Bay Area? Again, not the same. And so negotiating through those, you can sometimes use some of those, if you want, stereotypes that they have as a base point. Okay, you've known this. You've seen this on TV. Good, let's work with that. But so much of it is about that diversity, that internal diversity within the U.S. Because, well, which answer is true? Yeah, that is. And is it that? Yeah, it's that too.
Exactly. We started this discussion about stereotypes in a bit of a funny way and a sort of lighter way, but we could easily give it a bit of a more serious tinge, because stereotypes, diversity, these are the subjects with which we do have problems now, both in Poland, especially now, and in a way in the United States. What do you think we could learn from each other on that field, on the field of diversity, on the field of tolerance? Because as you can observe, many of you, most of you, including Seth, it's been 2 years, so you've been watching that. We've got some problems with tolerance, with accepting diversity, and so on and so forth. For me, it is a bit worrying. What do you think about it from a bit of an outsider perspective?
Everybody's quiet.
Everybody's quiet.
Yeah.
I'd like to start there.
Good.
So I came over here. I've tried to learn to be a global thinker, and I try to view as meeting people from everywhere, learning from people everywhere. So it definitely seems from both the American story and even the history that you study that seems Polish people really love about their country, and that is things have developed from everywhere, and they get changed and adopted and claimed either in the U.S. or here in Poland. So I struggle to think that things are exclusively belong to one country or another, or there's certain dimensions of diversity or elements of identity that are we'll say a national identity. So I struggle whenever I'm hearing a lot of things that are specifically Polish or specifically American. Yeah. And I just think it's part of a human movement throughout history.
All right.
Diversity is in the American genetic code. We've got 330 million inhabitants. 10 million are Alaskan Indian Eskimos and Native American Indians. 320 million Americans are either first-generation immigrants or descendants of immigrants. That's who we are. I've got German, Scottish, Irish, English blood in me. I married an Armenian woman, first generation. My twin brother married a Mexican woman. It's part of the American makeup. And you look at American history and, the immigrants that come, whether they're the Italians, there was racism against them. Against the Irish, there was racism against them. Against Latinos, against them. And then we have racism as well, which, slavery and awful, tragic history. But, out of this, all these influences from around the world, I think what makes America truly special is this mixture of all this different diversity. It unleashes this incredible potential. And I highly respect Poland for what it's achieved. The father of modern astronomy, Copernicus from here, the only person ever to win 2 different Nobel Prizes in 2 different scientific disciplines, and a woman, the first woman to win it, a Pole. Chopin is one of the world's favorite sons when it comes to classical music. I mean, it's amazing the brain power, not to mention all the other Nobel laureates from Poland. But diversity is an experiment. It's not easy. It's hard to manage. But I can tell you, America is one of the leading countries in the world, I think, because it's tapped all the diversity that's come onto its shores. And, it's just the way that you manage it. It's like our lives, everybody. It's not easy every day, but it's the journey, how we manage every day that we get through.
Sure. This is why I'm asking. Are you worried? Perhaps you can't say that openly in that kind of discussion, but are you worried in any way that things in terms of diversity are not going right in Poland when it comes to diversity and tolerance?
I guess, the thing, so what I would say for my part is I try to never, because I'm not a citizen, so I try never to, I don't make many comments about what's happening in the political sphere in Poland, because I'm not a citizen, so I'm not going to tell people how to run their own country or anything. So within my company, we try to, we have a set of values that I try to reflect, which includes inclusion. We have a rainbow flag that's been hanging in our office for a long time. That's just along the way as you're making your way to the kitchen. It's not a big thing, but people notice it, and it makes a statement. I try to be, the interesting thing is that, because we're in the capital city, so most of the people here, and especially in the technology industry, they tend to be of a certain political bent, which is not in line with the current government. And there was somebody in the office who is known to be a supporter of the government, and she actually told me that among all her friends in this office, she's the only person working here that doesn't get made fun of or get teased by her coworkers. And she said that's because of me, because everybody knows how I think, and I don't as the CEO, I don't ever tease her or make any comment about it. I don't bring up stuff that everybody's talking about. Can you believe what they did? I never do that to her, and I don't do it around her so that she feels comfortable, because that's her personal political views that she's allowed to have. And, I don't want her to feel discriminated here over them. So I was very proud of that. And so for me, as I'm reflecting American values. Yeah. I'm just trying just in here in this little space that we have here.
It just seems that no one fits in all the time, Greg. So it's about who's to say everyone doesn't deserve respect.
Oh, yeah. But Karl wanted to say, did you want to say something?
I just think Angelo tapped into something here when you were saying, well, I'm not a citizen and I'm an outsider. I don't know if it's my place to really tell people how to run their country, because I think probably, Angelo, you picked up on this. It took me a little while before I picked up on it too, that there's this, I don't know whether it's linked with Polish history or just what, but there's this sort of feeling of, we don't necessarily want people from other countries, especially Western countries, coming in and thinking they know better, thinking how we should run our country, how we should be. We've been told that a lot before. And what is sometimes very well-meaning and possibly maybe not just with the best of intentions, but it's just good and right or whatever, is sometimes taken in a sort of way. And so, like what you were saying, Angelo, what you do, rather than saying there, demonstrate. And okay, I'm going to embody what my values are, and let that go where it may, rather than making a sort of explicit statement. Oh my God, you should be this. Oh God.
All right.
Hey, by the way, Greg, we need some more diversity on this panel. You got a bunch of white men on here.
Yeah. That's exactly the question to the editor that I asked. That's question number one. And that's quite a reasonable question. So now,
if I could just say one thing about the history of San Francisco. So, California is a Pacific Rim state. In 1846, before gold is discovered in the Sierra Nevada foothills in 1848, 5,000 non-native English, non-native Indian, European settlers live in that area. Gold is discovered in 1848. By end of 1849, you have 500,000 people who've come from all over the world. Chinese, Russian, Swiss, probably Poles too. I know it's probably not a word in English, but it was the most internationalizing event in American history. And I think that profoundly affected California's culture from then on out. Because yes, there was racism at that. There was a lot of racism against actually Chinese and against Latinos as well. But out of that incredible mix, you got all these new people with new ideas, new food, new music, new face, new cultures. And you go to San Francisco, and it is so much fun going into these different places. And that's just, who we are.
All right. Coming back to education for a second. There's been so many alumni of different American programs in Poland now. Some of them are Americans. In fact, some of them are Polish who participated in various programs, like the organization that is the sponsor or the patron of this program today, Alumni Association. What do you think? What, in your opinion, could be the role of these organizations, or an organization like this one, Alumni Association, in strengthening these links, this international cooperation between Poland and the United States?
You want me to lead off in strictly educational? I can do that. I think all of those sort of relationships that are built up, whether it's at the early levels of students, researchers, or just students going all the way up to senior faculty and staff, the way that these exchanges work and the way that then the Alumni Association can work to maintain these relationships, where it's so much of it then also functions in academia. A ton of it is through who you also just know. And, someone who's working on this and so on and so on, and that the alumni network can help maintain those relationships and expand them is really invaluable, because those personal contacts and experiences are so meaningful in bringing people here. Like Dan was saying, pretty much all of us. Once you get here, it's a real place and they're real people. And it's really quite extraordinary. And so I think at all levels, from students all the way to researchers, that maintaining those contacts is really, really essential and really important.
Right.
Just in the academic context.
Okay. Daniel, you.
Yeah, I would just say, before I answer that question, I just want to say, my philosophy in life is the golden rule: do unto others as you would want to have done unto you. And I think that's a formula anywhere you live in the world, whether it's in Poland, the United States, or Armenia. You can just treat others how you would want to be treated, regardless of their skin color, their race, or gender, or what have you. I think that would be my big message. Alumni, it's interesting. They play a huge role in the United States, especially in our universities. So my parents, God rest their souls, are both gone. They went to UC Berkeley from 1946 to 1950. And UC Berkeley sent them information about alumni activities, college activities, trips abroad, lectures, until the days that they died. It's really important in American culture to be part of an alumni network, I would say. It obviously depends on the alumnus or alumna if they want to be actively involved. But, I know from the Peace Corps as well, they have a strong alumni network. For U.S. embassies all around the world, we actually have people in our embassies who are in charge of trying to promote alumni networks, because we view alumni of our U.S. government-sponsored exchange programs as ambassadors of goodwill for the United States. They connect their home country with the United States. And so we try to use them to attract new people to want to study in the United States. We include them in a lot of our culture activities. And for us, they're natural partners for what we're trying to do to promote a better understanding of America, to promote messages about foreign policy and things like that.
All right. There's a question from one of our viewers. What do you miss the most from America or of America when you are here? Maybe Seth, you haven't spoken for a while. What do you miss the most? Well, it's only been 2 years, so perhaps you're not, but still.
I think I miss, there's a certain element of service establishments that are compensated based on tips and performance. And so I think a pace. And I miss going into certain public institutions where it's quicker. I think I miss sometimes there's a quicker pace.
You're talking about administration, yes?
Administration, as well as I think I like to be a productive person. So sometimes here the emphasis is on connection, deepening that, taking your time, and my American pace may be a little quicker.
All right, okay. Angelo, I can see you've got something to say about that.
Oh no, I always laugh at this question because there was like I always say, as an American, wherever you go, like the culture follows you. Yeah. So you can see American movies, American television, American, you can access, and with the internet now, you can access it everywhere. I mean, when I first came here, that was not the case, but I knew this, people would ask, what do you miss about America? And I used to say like, something lame, like, I don't know, peanut butter or something. And I met this Polish woman and she was like, yes, when I was in London, I missed the smell of the forest in Poland. And I was like, wow, that's a great line. I got to write that down. That's impressive. Yeah. Because, I miss, you miss your family, but like, for me, it's like, I'm a fan of American football. Now, of course, you can watch everything now online, and I have a bunch of friends that we watch it all together. But I was traveling in the States on business during the season, and I get this alert on my phone because I'm tied into these apps about the game. And I heard the same sound all around me. Like all these people are into the same thing I'm into. And, you can go to the bar and there's 150 people watching this game. So I miss that kind of thing. If you want that kind of sports experience here, you have to watch, I think they call it soccer or something. It's not the same.
Never heard of it.
Karl?
I was afraid you were going to ask me. That was hard to say.
You forgot what you miss. You forgot what you miss.
Almost. I've been here so long that it's almost hard to say anymore. And I was never a huge sports fan, so I can't say, man, I miss going to see the Bears or something. I think if I just, because when you mentioned the what was it, the smell of the forest.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be that for me. I'm thinking more, maybe it's also a function of my living in Bydgoszcz, which is a little smaller. But I miss kind of like a feeling of a really vibrant, diverse metropolis, you know. I say it until the day I die. I love Poles. I love Polish culture. My wife is Polish. My son is Polish, bicultural. But boy, sometimes it's just that homogeneity. Sometimes I miss that diversity that we're used to in the U.S. That, you know, simply walking down the street,
Yes.
wherever, you just encounter so much difference and variety just in the course of an hour, you know. Or, oh, you feel like this? Bang, go there, or whatever. And maybe I missed that a little bit.
All right.
Sounds like a bit of a cliche now that I said it, but there it is.
No, but that's how you're feeling. Okay. I'm quite curious. Seth, you wrote in an email that you could say, or give us a few suggestions. Was that you? I think it was you. A few suggestions to improve the Polish bureaucracy and customer experience. And I'm just dying to hear it. I'm going to put it down and make it public and send it to relevant officers. So you've got an opportunity, a chance of your lifetime to actually introduce those changes. I'm all ears.
Well, it's centered around a purchase of a vehicle, and I had to pay an excise fee. It was here in the European Union. And, you know, I moved here directly from Omaha, Nebraska, which is a size city about the same as Karl, about 700,000 people.
Right.
And I'm used to going one trip to register your vehicle. And I wasn't used to actually going to 4 or 5 different trips where I was, it felt like I was arguing in order to declare an amount in order to pay to have a car. So I think maybe having a results mindset, meaning that we all want the same thing. It shouldn't be, we're both collaborative as opposed to there's a government worker as opposed to a citizen, and we're sort of antagonistic. And I would like to be a little bit more on the same page and quicker. I would like to move it down to maybe 1 or 2 trips.
Speed.
Yes. See, Seth, you know, I love hearing it because you remind me when I was young and idealistic about it, because now I'm totally zen about it now. I go in, I expect a hassle, I expect it's going to take a long time, I have to argue with the guy, they got the wrong form. You know, I had to get some document renewed. I filled out all the forms. I sent everything they said. They sent me back a letter.
Listen, Seth, this is what you will be like in 20 years' time.
These 5
It's been no less than 20 people have said, you may want to get used to this.
Yeah, you just, you know, it flows through me, man. I don't even feel it anymore. I'm numb.
But it becomes almost a flow, you know? It's like, okay, yep, okay.
Okay, that's how they do it, you know.
Okay.
Hey,
Well, that,
I can adapt.
I felt sorry for everyone in the experience, including myself. It was rough.
Yeah, or, you know, if you, as you say with a car, you go into a car dealership in America, they practically tackle you. I mean, you can't get out of there without trying to car. Here, I'm walking around, hey, I want to buy a car. I got to, you know, it's 100, you know, I mean, you would think they'd have some incentive. I don't know. How it's organized, I don't know. But it's definitely not like in the States. I mean, you avoid going to buy a car into a car dealership in America because you don't want to get attacked by the
or arrested.
Here, you know, if you want to go to the witness protection program, just go to a car dealership. They'll never find you.
Well, you can.
Yeah, that was. I think.
You can do it online. Mirosław is writing.
Oh, I wish I would have known.
Karl, just wanted to ask you a question regarding your work. How are Polish students different from American students, if you can make that comparison?
It's been a while since I've had American students, but fortunately I've been mentoring young Americans coming to teach, so it reminds me of some of it. They have, like you were mentioning, Seth, about power distance. They are much more distant in the sense of, especially since they put that title in front of my name, You know, where, you know, ask a question. Oh, no.
All right.
There's a greater sort of distance there where American students are much more likely to tell you, hey, that's stupid, or, you know, whatever. They ask you questions, really interact. Here, you know, and this is a cultural thing about, you know, showing respect and deference and so on. But there's a much greater distance there, if you will, between the two sides of the aisle, if you want. That's one thing right there.
Yeah, okay.
Which is easy to misconstrue and think that it means that they're either not interested or whatever. Oh, no. I had one student, for example, he would sit in class taking no notes, nothing, never said anything. But if you ever asked him anything, he knew absolutely everything, understood everything perfectly, could elaborate on everything because, man, he was brilliant. But he didn't feel it was appropriate to speak up in class unless he had been asked to. Something like that.
I think Americans could take a few lessons from the Poles as far as education and seriousness. It's very impressive.
Well, don't get the wrong impression. There are some pretty terrible ones too. I mean, come on. But, you know,
Seth, what's impressive?
The value placed on education. I know there is great universities and infrastructure here, as well as the job market is very competitive from a skill set standpoint. So the students that I've encountered, they are very sharp.
And I would just add on, you know, I'm on the Fulbright board of directors, and the people that we interview are just amazing what they're doing in all different sectors. And Ambassador Mosbacher likes to call Poland the Silicon Valley of Europe because of just the brain power that's here. And a lot of, you know, high-tech companies, well, I don't know a lot, but a decent number of the big ones are starting to start operations here. So, you know, Poles, I would say what's interested me is, yeah, they, I don't know, maybe Seth would disagree with me, but they have so much to offer the world with their brain power. And I think they're holding back a little bit because they don't want to stick out and I sort of, you know, be the nail that gets hit on the head with the hammer. Whereas Americans were taught very early, you know, I mean, because we leave our homes at 18 and we're on our own, you sort of got to fend for yourself. And so that independence streak is really important for us. And, you know, we're also showmen. We know how to sell things, you know, we're salesmen, you know, we give pitches and these, you know, the elevator pitch and so on. And you just sort of have to do it, or you don't survive, or you don't do well. So, you know, again, going back to Poland as being this undiscovered, you know, diamond in the rough. There's so much that's beautiful here. Maybe the Poles don't want to, or the Americans who are here don't want other Americans to know about it. But I'd say there's so much that Poland can share with the rest of the world.
Is it on your? I'm talking to you as a representative of the embassy, or even the government. Is this on your agenda to attract Polish prospective students to study at American university, or it's not that important?
Yes, no, that's a goal of most, I mean, all U.S. diplomatic installations I see around the world is, you know, it's not only an academic goal, you know, this goes, you know, Greg taps into diversity. We want diverse minds coming onto our campuses. American universities love having international students and professors because they bring new skill sets, new perspectives of looking at things. And so that actually, American universities advertise that in their brochures, because I just went through an application process with my 18-year-old son. You know, they said, we've got all these international professors and students here, but also it's a huge business as well in the United States. I mean, there are over 1 million foreign students in the United States, and I want to say it's closing in on, is it $15 billion a year? So it's also a big, you know, economic stimulus for us. I would just say, you know, I've been a diplomat for 21 years, but I've been living overseas most of the last 30 years doing different things. And I would love to see more Americans doing what sort of I did when I was 18 on, like going overseas and having these beautiful experiences. I know Poles go to other parts of Europe, but I would love to see Poles also going to, you know, not only the East Coast of the United States, but the West Coast, or going to Africa, or going to Asia, because there's so much to see out there. Our lives are so short. And, you know, I'm already regretting it. I'm halfway done with my life. And I'm going to see just the tip of my thumb And it's so beautiful. The nature I'd like to see, the food I'd like to try, the extreme sports I'd like to do, swimming with dolphins in, the Indian Ocean. And I'm never going to be able to do it. And I just think it's unfortunate that, that we get stuck in sort of, not these guys, because these guys have done it. But, there's so much to see out there. And, when you're young and you don't have the financial responsibilities of loans or a house or, payments,
all right.
Go out and see it all. Or
Okay.
go out and see some of it.
All right, guys. We're just about to round it all up. We're coming to 7 o'clock, so it's just about time. Thank you very much. Good to have talked to you. You're all very, very welcome in Poland. Diversity of life perspective, opinion, attitudes is, I think, and many people do, an enriching factor, and lots of good can be derived from it. So after all, we all share most of our big problems, and we need to address them together, really. So let's stay in touch and keep enjoying your life here, whether you've been here for 20 years or just a couple of years or so. Thank you very much for today. Daniel Hastings, Angelo Pressello, Seth McMillan, and Karl Wood. All the best, and a very good evening to all of you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
No.